we can activate the codes of the new world in ourselves right now and become a walking invitation for the emergence of that reality. If you're going to bring a different level of leadership through, then it needs to come from a different level of intelligence, which is available to each one of us because we are rock and river and sky and rain and grass. We're the whole thing. Like, there is nothing about any of us that is not made of the planet that we're walking in and the natural world that we're part of. We are it. Therefore, we are infinitely capable of bringing through a different quality of intelligence. We just need to open to it. Opening to it is always the first step.
Hello and welcome to this episode, which is a powerful transmission. The way the words land can really activate something within you. I found myself dancing around the studio after this conversation. This, as well as a wonderful woman reaching out this week for mentoring, sparked me to offer another round of the beautiful leadership mentoring and immersion this spring. It feels like many of us are ready to plant the seeds we have, and I know that beautiful leadership offers the soil for this. We are just towards the end of the current cohort of the immersion, and the feedback on our call this week was powerful. The course opens possibilities of a different way of living, being, and working that is more true to your soul and what is possible in this world. I absolutely love working one-to-one with the beautiful leadership mentoring, where it's a fusion of embodiment, opening to intuition and the subtle body, practical and energetic advice, and deep energy work, which can heal lifelong patterns, ancestral trauma, and transform fear so that you can be free to be the beautiful leader that you are. In this conversation, Clare talks about the seeds of the future that we came with, that we can nurture and water. For any of you that have ever done any one-to-one energy work with me, we plant seeds in the session. That's the language that I've been using for years. I always talk about these seeds being yours that you came with, but for whatever reason weren't able to plant in your childhood, normally because the people in your life and society didn't know what they were. In my sessions, we plant seeds of these qualities that are dormant within, and then you water them over the weeks following until they become an integrated and natural part of who you are and what you offer the world. It's like you've had this bag of seeds, but they've been right in the garden shed underneath a whole load of stuff, and they need to be uncovered and nurtured and brought into being. When working together in the leadership mentoring, we plant a whole garden and then experience it coming into bloom. If you want to book a session with me, this is the work I call intuitive therapy, which you can find on my website, amisha.co.uk, if you click on private sessions. And if you click on mentoring, you'll find out details of the extended program where, because we meet every 2 weeks, one-to-one, we're able to go deeper into the soil and bloom higher and wider and brighter into this world. For the beautiful leadership mentoring and the immersion, that will begin the week of April 26th until the week of July the 5th. You can do them both together. They weave together really nicely so that you have the one-to-one work and then you have these really powerful classes and master classes from over 13 different facilitators who have all been guests on this podcast, including Nina Simons, Sally Kempton, Alan Moore, Ed Gillespie, just to name a few. You work through that at your own pace alongside an opening and closing ceremony and some check-in points with the group along the way. And it's very transmission-based. You have these really powerful workshops and then these missions that invite you to really embody some of this learning. You can find all the details if you visit the courses page on our website, which is www.thefutureisbeautiful.co. We need more beautiful leaders at this time, that is for sure. And this work really awakens the feminine intelligence and brings more balance between the masculine and feminine aspects of your being. My guest today is Clare Dubois, who is the founder and CEO of TreeSisters.org, a global women's movement spanning multiple countries that has collectively funded the planting of over 15 million trees. Tree Sisters is a social change movement and a tropical reforestation organization working towards normalizing cultural reciprocity with nature. The aim of both Clare and Tree Sisters is to make it as normal to give back to nature as it currently is to take nature for granted, while supporting humanity in its transition from a consumer species to a restorer species. Before founding Tree Sisters, Clare worked internationally for over 2 decades, coaching business leaders and facilitating group behavior change processes in multiple sectors. Known for her direct catalytic energy, her inspirational speaking, and her holistic approach to collective transformation, Clare is a walking invitation to anyone ready to step up and step in on behalf of the planet. Tree Sisters is a wonderful charity. We already support them by planting trees for every month for every member of Presence Collective. We are currently exploring more ways we can work together and partner to grow a forest. More on that in time. In this week's episode, we explore the themes of reforestation, feminine leadership, and radical interconnectedness in this conversation called Planting Future Intelligence. We contemplate the question, how do we create a world in which everything is sacred? I hope that this conversation activates these seeds within you so we may grow a more beautiful forest together. Welcome to The Future is Beautiful, with me, your host, Amisha Gadiali. On this show, we explore the weave between politics, spirituality, creativity, and sustainability. It's time for us to move beyond silos and into an integrated way of being. Every one of us has ideas and personal experiences to share that can lead us to a brighter future. This is the revolution. Despite the challenges we face as a global community or the pressures that we meet in our daily lives, when we stop and dare to dream, to ask ourselves the big questions, and to share what we are already doing, we create the future that we wish to wake up for. That future is beautiful. Clare, I am absolutely delighted to welcome you to The Future is Beautiful. Thank you for being here with us today.
It's my pleasure. Thank you for holding that the future can be beautiful.
Well, we've never had any pre-planned questions on this show, but I just felt to start this week asking this question of what does a beautiful future mean to you, and really calling in on those powers of vision. As I ask the question, I'm reminded and transported to Pioneers in 2019 when we used to gather, as we will do again, and doing this extraordinary embodied workshop with you of visioning a regenerative future and really feeling it in our bodies as we moved around the space. It's quite extraordinary.
Yeah, it's funny. I immediately want to go, oh, how was that for you? What happened? We never had a debrief from it. And actually, what's extraordinary about that, so for listeners, we're talking about a process that I call the paradigm shift process. And the paradigm shift process is actually something I'm going to bring to the world properly this year. It was a process that was given to me in a split second on stage while someone was handing me a microphone saying, are you ready? Are you ready to face these 300 people that have all come to hear you speak? And you're supposed to deliver something. And I had no time to be able to prepare anything. And I had sat and tried to come out with something that was going to be relevant. But actually, there was nothing there. And as I stood staring at these people going, oh my God, there's actually nothing here. Like, I'm completely empty. I thought to myself, wow, this is an actual hollow bone moment. Like, this is what that is. This is an actual hollow bone moment. And the microphone landed in my hand. And I looked at this guy with just like, I don't know what's going to come out of my mouth. Like, oh my God. And then what came out of my mouth was, not a single one of you is going to leave the same as you walked in tonight. And if I'm really lucky, you're all going to leave extremely uncomfortable and hopeful. And then I proceeded to deliver this thing that landed fully formed. And it was this journey of go pre-birth, arrive in the reality that we are now in, which is basically a dominance culture. It's a dominance culture that dominates everything, that sees nothing as sacred, that sees everything as property, that is not in sacred relationship with anything as far as I can make out. And actually experience the insanity of that, like actually land in the dissonance of that. Like, we've normalized it. It's how we live, but it is completely abnormal. And there is only one future from this place if we don't course correct. And it's not a good one. But this invitation to step forward into what I call the bridging paradigm, or the age of awakening, where actually the longing to be in relationship with each other and with nature in a way that brings back meaning and belonging and purpose and intimacy and nurturance is so extraordinary. And from there, there's the possibility of what I call a paradigm of restoration. This future that is beautiful to me is right there. And it's up ahead in as much as we have to create it, but the seeds of it have to be in us here now. Like, the seeds are in us here and now. And that future is truly beautiful to me. And it's set of choices away, but it is a world in which there is no waste. I mean, it's so interesting what I think of the future that I want. There is no waste. There's just no waste. And what that means is everything has become sacred enough to be valued. Everything. And if you go to that world in which everything is sacred enough to be valued, then you've already come to the place that people of value and children are of value and species are of value and soil is of value, because we've changed our behaviors sufficiently to say all of life matters. And to get there, there's such a profound shift of the heart and shift of the mind, shift in relationship to what a human being actually is, what we're actually capable of, what our value system really is, what we want to create for ourselves. Just because we're living a certain way doesn't mean that it's sane or healthy or loving to the world in which we live. And so there are a set of other choices. When I do that process with people, there's the point where you're standing in the paradigm of restoration. You've made it to this world where humanity is living in sacred reciprocity with nature, and regeneration and restoration has become fundamental to what it means to be human. Like, that's the world up ahead that I'm working towards. And then you turn around and you look back to the self that's in the dominator paradigm, and you hold space for them to make the journey. And the reason I love that process is because it says we can activate the codes of the new world in ourselves right now and become a walking invitation for the emergence of that reality. It's in all of us right now. It has to be, or we wouldn't have incarnated into the biggest turning point our world has ever created, or we've ever created for our world. So there's a beautiful world up ahead, but we need to activate it, birth it, create it.
It's so powerful. And the notion that the first thing that needs to happen is to actually just give ourselves permission to actually be birthing that seed. And that's where so many of us, don't, right? We're like, what, how can you either aren't paying attention, or it's like, how do you do it with your head or with with something else? And I love that that it invites in this, like, the seeds are there. You came with the seeds. You have the seeds. What happens if we plant them?
To me, they're already planted. Like, they're in us. Can we water them? Can we nurture them? And how do you water them? And the tools that we've got, to me, are awareness and love. How do we use our mind? Where do we direct our energy? And how do we use our hearts? What do we nurture with our love? Our love is so powerful. Our love is so powerful. If I spend too much time listening to my mind, I will throw myself off a cliff, because my mind is going to regurgitate everything that I'm being told, and I'm being told nothing but nightmares in this world of ours, pretty much. Everything that's going wrong, all the ways in which we're being manipulated, all the species decline and the blah, 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 blah. My mind is going to look at the symptoms of reality and just go, oh my God, it's over. My heart, if I fall into my heart and I feel for what I love and what matters and where I'm drawn and what the expression of my joy is and where my passion is, then I can take flight. I'm not going to fall off a cliff. I'm going to go flying. I'm going to soar. My heart is going to be able to guide me on a journey that allows me to have a completely different perspective of what it means to be human. So one of the first things I always invite people to do when I'm with them or teaching or meditating with them or whatever is, can you allow yourself to drop what it means to be human, or what you think it means to be human? Can you actually just go, oh my God, I have no idea, in fact, what it means to be a human. I know what I've been taught. What if our version of what a human being isn't even 5% of what human capacity really is? When you know that there are humans on this planet that can call in the rain or the weather or the wind, or, who can put crystals in the ground and create water, there's incredible things that people in this world can do. A big majority just sit in front of the TV or sit in front of a computer screen, completely disconnected from the reality of what our capacities, our genuine capacities actually are. When you think you know something, you're like a closed system. When you don't know something, you're an open system. An open system, like a being that's sitting there staring at a forest going, I don't know what I am. That being is available for the forest to communicate to them. That being is available for the sky to communicate to them, because they're not limited in the perception that a human being can't speak to trees or a human being can't speak to the sky. But when you become a mystery to yourself, when you just say, I have no idea what I'm for, what I'm made of, what this vehicle that I'm walking around in is capable of, what my love can achieve in this world, what my creativity is actually for, what seeds are inside me that are waiting to be born. It's like when you can suddenly go, I haven't got a clue. Suddenly the universe can go, right, okay, now she's open, he's open. Let's start whispering, or let's start yelling, or in my case, let's ram them into a tree so they can't possibly miss it. It's like becoming available to me really is the first step. And what I found difficult about that, apart from everything, actually, the biggest thing for me was, can I even become available to the perception that a beautiful world is possible when the world that I love so much is dying all around me? How I use my mind to address that death really impacts how my heart can function. I think one of the most responsible things we need to be doing as human beings right now is really carefully organizing how we use our minds so that our hearts can be functioning. And that means really carefully not going into major polarization and fear, which seems to me to be the thing that the powers that be are trying to manipulate in the world, is fear so that we can be controlled. So the absolutely most important thing for me personally anyway is to grow the muscles of being able to witness what's going on and not plug into it, so that I can plug into what I call the mainframe, which is not the insanity, it's the sanity of nature. The sanity of the trees, the sanity of the sky, of the earth, of the waters, that know exactly how to live in communion with all things. If I'm going to bring a different level of leadership through, if you're going to bring a different level of leadership through, then it needs to come from a different level of intelligence, which is available to each one of us, because we are rock and river and sky and rain and grass. We're the whole thing. Like, there is nothing about any of us that is not made of the planet that we're walking in and the natural world that we're part of. We are it. Therefore, we are infinitely capable of bringing through a different quality of intelligence. We just need to open to it. Opening to it is always the first step.
Yes. Yes to all of that. Yeah, so powerful. And as you're saying it, it's like I feel it all just like come alive in my cells. That reminder that it's a constant process, that opening. that always knowing that there's more to open to, like if that's the only thing that you know, that there's more and that you don't know everything. And how can we actually live and lead from that place?
By choosing it, and then by losing it and choosing it again, and by losing it and choosing it again, and understanding, I think, that in the losing it, speaking from personal experience, it's not a loss. We're not doing anything wrong. There's more muscles to be grown in the learning how to anchor in a particular way of being. It's like, okay, I can really meditate well when I'm in a room full of people meditating. Okay, now I've got to learn how to meditate on my own. Now I need to learn how to meditate in a bus full of screaming kids with, global domination happening all around me, and the sixth major extinction crisis, and the whatever it is. Like, it's so interesting to me. TreeSisters was given to me as an invitation to women primarily. It's for everybody, but it initially came through with this message. You have to mobilize the women. The women are the missing piece. The women are the womb carriers, and Earth is womb. Women understand the cycles of nature, the cycles of life and death that happens in their bodies every month. Feminine consciousness is the consciousness of life cycles, of seasons, blah, 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 all of this stuff. And it was saying women and nature share a common history. What's been done to one has been done to the other. And I was sort of looking at that, the normalization of the suppression of the feminine in our world, the normalization of patriarchy. It's not healthy masculine energy, it's toxic masculine energy, which puts itself in a superior state and the feminine in an inferior state. And so you've got the dominant male and the victim female playing out on our planet at the very archetypal level. Well, then women are having to find our sovereignty in the bus of screaming kids with global domination going on. It's like women are needing to grow the muscles of redefining what it means to be a woman, not according to what we've been told, not according to who we're supposed to be on behalf of the men in the world that want women to be a particular way. To be able to somehow, in the face of all of that dissonance, listen for a deeper truth that arises through our bodies as nature, the nature of our bodies as nature, that comes up from below, not from what we're told, but from what we feel, that arises in us through the nature of our bodies. Something that creates a coherence that's so strong that it can rise despite the messaging and the subjugation and the taunting and the sexual abuse and the everything else that's happened to women over God knows how long. So that as our world starts to shift into a place of, willingness to address the value of women, the strength that's rising is incredibly clear because of the adversity that it has been built through. Like all manner of layers that we have had to build because we're surfacing through profound resistance, like we're growing through the resistance field of the patriarchy. That's how I see each of us in the learning how to stabilize our compass point towards this beautiful new future that we're wanting to birth. What is the you? What is the me that is so committed to the creation of that we can hold the frequency of it no matter what the chaos is, as the world that we've known disintegrates around us. It's going to disintegrate. It's going to be very messy because we cannot create the new world with an economy that requires the death of nature in order to thrive. That's what we've got. We've got an economy that requires the death of nature and the subjugation of peoples all over the world in order to thrive. That economy has to go. So our whole basis for what it means to be human has to go before we get to this beautiful new future, which means we have to be able to believe in it, dare to feel that we've got something to create of it, even if all we're doing in this moment is holding the dream while the systems collapse. Stay true to your core value system. What brings your heart alive? What brings your heart alive? What helps you stabilize yourself? What helps you come into your anchor? What brings you home to yourself? And then do that as much as possible. And then find others that are doing that as much as possible. Like we need to be linking arms with those who are unequivocally stepping away from victim consciousness, stepping away from polarization, domination or victim, stepping into a consciousness that could bring about the kind of future that we want, and then like hold that course. And as I say, as we fall off it, as we go back into, oh my God, it's hopeless, or oh my God, what's happening, or I'm frightened, or whatever, going, okay, it's another layer to build this clarity through. What does it take for me to feel that completely and keep generating this clear, committed through line to the version of myself that I want to be in this world, no matter what's going on, the version of humanity that I want to see in this world, no matter what's going on, and the version of our world we want to see. It's a choice. It's a choice that starts in every moment.
Claire, when you speak, there's nothing to say. It's just like it lands, and I'm like, I feel the seeds like blooming as you speak. It's so beautiful. Thank you for this offering. When you talk about this kind of powerful reframe of women and really moving out of that victim consciousness into a place of like, and I've been through that, and I'm still here, full of love, like able to create. It just wakes something up that we don't have to get stuck in these, like, in all this pettiness of trying to change the system in that level, you know, trying to get an extra seat on the table and all of that kind of thing, that we can actually do it through a whole different resonance within.
I think so. I mean, this is like cutting edge conversation right here. Like, this is completely cutting edge for me. Like, my brain, my mind, my awareness is right at the cusp of this for myself. You know, there'll be others who are way, way, way ahead. But for me, it's like, God, what was I thinking? Like 2 days ago, I was sitting there. I was with my bees. I was thinking my bees were going to swarm. And so I was sitting down by my hive, just like listening to them. And I was, in my mind's eye, I was watching women remembering who and what we really are. Now, that was what I heard in the car crash where I was given TreeSisters. Women have to remember who and what they really are. Feminine consciousness has to be reinstated or it's over. They were the last two things I heard after your project is called TreeSisters. You have to make it as normal to give back to nature as it currently is to take nature for granted. It's a crowdfunding mechanism, blah, blah, blah. I mean, literally, TreeSisters was given to me word for word.
In a car crash?
In a car crash. Yeah, I swerved on ice. I was heading for an edge and a tree stopped me from going over an edge, which was one of life's great metaphors for how trees can stop people, our world, going over an edge.
I also was saved once by a tree trunk on an edge of a cliff.
Wow.
I was in a bus we were in the jungle in Bolivia, and the driver fell asleep. We were going into the jungle up these windy roads, and because he fell asleep, we went down the side of the edge, and the bus hit a tree stump, flipped on its side, and then we managed to climb out. And obviously after that, it was a sheer drop. And I've been talking to my niece about it recently, because she's been asking me, like, you've nearly died before, haven't you? Tell me all the times you've nearly died. And so I've been telling her the different stories of my accidents over the years. That one, she's like, you would have died if it wasn't for that tree, right? And she just came back with that like a week later. And so hearing you say that, I wonder how many trees have not only saved us, but woken us up in these ways. And it's my wish that not everyone has to go through a crash.
I know a fair few people, funnily enough, who have had life-changing experiences with trees. You know, we don't think of them as, conscious representatives of a awake universe, but they are.
Yeah, because I was 19 in that accident, and I've had a whole bunch of accidents, but when I'm like, well, what was that one about? And that one for me was really the one of service. It was like before I'd gone to university, I was going to study politics, but it was like, I probably still had my hopes on like a nice house and nice handbags and all of that, like in my future life. And that was really like that moment of like, okay, you're here for something and it's service and you have to find out what that means, which is beautiful. Thank you for bringing that back in to my consciousness.
It's hilarious hearing a woman talk about handbags in their future. Handbags was a gene that I missed. Like, I have never understood handbags. And in fact, I get completely freaked out when anybody like hands me one. So I can't remember where I was going. You asked me a question and I started talking about the crash, but I can't remember what the question was or where I was going. Do you remember?
You were sharing what the last words were that you heard right before the silence.
Feminine consciousness has to be reinstated or it's over. But I can't remember why I was sharing that. Remember why I was sharing that?
Well, it just needs to be said, doesn't it?
Feminine consciousness has to be reinstated or it's over. Well, yeah, I can just speak to that in this moment. It took another 9 months actually after that car crash because I was given this job. I said no. I was totally terrified. My life flashed before my eyes. I saw myself in the future. Bear in mind, when I had the car crash, I was practically a recluse. I've never had a job in my life that was with people. I'd always been on my own. And suddenly I was being asked to front a global movement and be a public figure, be on social media and have a computer and figure out how to do fundraising and like figure out how to do everything. It was just like saying, okay, you see this little thing that you think you are, actually you're something completely different. And it's just like, no, I'm not that. And yet at the same time, knowing on the inside that life knew me way better than I knew myself, and that I was being confronted with the fact that I was wedded to my neuroticism. Life said, you have capacity for all of this. And I was like, no, I'm this little thing that is, no, don't ask me to be that thing. And yet I could see what it was saying, and I was furious and I was depressed. It was like being called out on your stuff, like just called on your crap. And life called me and I caved. And I was just like, if that's in me, I don't dare bring it out. And then 9 months later, everything that I had done, because I tried to do it, I tried to do what they'd said, but I tried to do it in my own way. And everything I did failed, one after the other. It was just like a bigger failure, a more painful failure, a more public failure, until I was just like, okay, I get it. I'm sorry, I'm doing something wrong. And back came, you can do all of that, but you do it through the women. And I went through this process with life. Life gave me these 5 choices: to be considerate of life, encouraging of your sisters, intimate with nature, responsible for its protection, and courageous with your gifts. And I sat with those 5 capacities and I drew a 5-pointed star and I placed them on the 5-pointed star where I thought they went. And I looked at it and I thought, that kind of makes sense. And then I left it for like 3 weeks. And then 3 weeks later, I woke up in the middle of the night and I was like, oh my God, it's 5-element acupuncture for consciousness. And I ran down and I found this piece of paper and I looked at it and I was just like, okay, there is the clockwise spin of feminine consciousness to masculine, feminine to masculine. The mind, the open heart, and the open body in relationship with self, other, and nature, so that in the feeling how things are, you can know what to do, the masculine principle, the active principle of our relationship with nature, the active heart and the active mind. It was like I suddenly understood the feminine has to come first, because the feminine is relational, instinctual feeling. It feels the life force of a system and understand, and then can communicate that in a way that the active aspect of us, the masculine principle, can take action to either destroy or create life. Only we've been in a system that has fundamentally devalued the feminine on all levels. And so relationship is devalued, and care is devalued, and love and intimacy and compassion and collaboration. They're all devalued over the great I am of the towering ego that wants to do everything short term, build and grow and chomp up our world, which is a masculine principle gone awry because it's not in harmonious, respectful relationship with the feminine that basically says, here, this is how this is. And the masculine goes, oh, well, what should we do to make it healthier? Not, how can I trash it to make more money? we've put money on the throne, and actually life needs to be on the throne. And what I was being shown in that car crash was women understand relationship with life in a different way, possibly because we create it. Women are womb and earth is womb. Is it because we bring life in through our bodies and we're fundamentally creative? Is it because the moon organizes our hormones? Is it because we're simply wired in a completely different way to have more nature awareness? We're certainly wired hormonally to tend a system into health. We're constantly looking for the health of a system and how to bring it into harmony. So we're wired for a different kind of intelligence. And it's the intelligence that's missing in our world, because it's the intelligence that puts health first and vitality first and community and love and family first. It says we're all in this together. We're all valid. We're all sacred. How do we create a world in which everything is sacred? Well, we're not going to do it if half of this world is considered less than because it's got a womb. And we're not going to do it if God knows what percentage of this world is less than because it's not white or it's not straight, or it's something other than a white male. And that's not to denigrate all white males, because there are some incredibly beautiful white males out there. And there are some who are still perpetuating the lie, the outright lie, that anybody has any more value than anybody else, or that any living system has any greater value than anything else, because we fundamentally lost our ability to understand the radical, exquisite interconnectedness of all things, where everything has a place in the order of creation. Everything has a place in the creation of thriving life. So yeah, you can hack down the rainforests over there, but if you do that, don't think that it's not going to impact our temperate climate over here. Just because it's that far removed and we can't see it doesn't mean that our rain is going to keep falling from the sky. Doesn't mean that our oceans are going to still be able to perpetuate life. It's all interconnected, and we've lost it. We've just lost it. And that fundamental connection is relationship, and that is the feminine principle. That's the feminine principle.
I'm going to repeat those words because it got garbled just as you said this phrase, the radical, exquisite interconnection, the radical, exquisite interconnectedness.
How often do we wake up and just go, oh my God, I'm living in a miracle? Everything is in communion with everything else. Everything, apart from human beings who just go around using it all. But many Indigenous peoples are still living in dynamic relationship with a living world of which they see themselves a part. They see themselves as part of the world. That's why it was so preposterous to the native peoples of Turtle Island that white people arrived and said, well, we're going to own this. Well, how can you own something that you belong to? We belong to our planet. We can't hack it up into small pieces and own it and then trash it. It's like, I remember this conversation with a native elder, Tom Goldtooth, when I said to him, TreeSisters is constantly being asked to do carbon offsetting. I'd love to know your views. He looked at me with such pain in his eyes. And I instantly, just by looking into his eyes, got this transmission of just how far away we have come from understanding our unique relationship with all things, that we can compartmentalize it in the way that would allow me to even utter that question. And then he just said back to me, how can you monetize the sacred? And I was like, yeah, there it is. There it is. That's how far we've come. And that's how far away we've come from who and what we are. Oh, I remember what we were talking about before now. I remember. I was talking about the fact that when women could potentially, this is for men too, this is absolutely for all of us, but I was thinking specifically around women because we've been so profoundly pushed away from the abilities that allow us to listen most deeply and honor the listening that comes through our bodies, and that re-sacredizing of ourselves, that claiming of our own sovereignty, not in reaction to or in anger against anything that's been done to us, purely because it's true that we are sovereign selves, that we have a unique value, and that we get to give ourselves that validation. We can't wait for anybody else to give it. not like men are going to come along and say, oh, I'm sorry you weren't responsible for the fall of creation, Eve. We've lived inside that story for so long. But as women, as we allow the knowledge of who and what we really are to rise up in our bodies, to me, it felt like this soul hydration, this planetary hydration, as humanity starts to remember what it is. It was like this feeling of rising truth that somehow had this incredible fertility to it. She's like, oh my God, this is going to be so beautiful as we remember who we are, outside of the chaos that's going on, can hold our centers enough to remember who and what we are. That astonishing truth of our nature as part of nature kind of weaves us back into the fertility of a world that then provides the intelligence, hopefully, and the leadership that can then start to create that world, because we're starting to embody it.
Hello. We're taking a short pause from the conversation. On behalf of our team and our community, thank you for being here and co-creating The Future is Beautiful. Much dedication, love, and time goes into the production of this show. We believe in being advertising free in a world that's always trying to sell us stuff we don't need. And so we make this show with you and for you, thanks to your support. There are 3 ways you can be more involved, so we can share the vision, wisdom, and creativity here as we explore what it means to be a human in this time. You can support the podcast by sharing it with your friends, posting episodes on social media, and doing iTunes reviews. You can support as a patron by making a monthly or one-off donation of your choice. And with this, you join the Global Patrons group and monthly video calls where we share connection and insight. You get to know the other amazing patrons from around the world, their stories and their work, and you offer direct support to me and the team, as well as being brought into the behind the scenes of creating something like this. It sounds like a lot, but it's as much or as little as you want to get involved in. You can become a member of Presence, our membership collective of care and practice, where we explore how to embody the themes of the podcast with workshops, calls, special events, tree whispers, and powerful tools, practices, and rituals that you can bring into your life. This is open to absolutely everybody as we create an inclusive and diverse space that celebrates well-being as a human right, where we explore together what it means to be creative, courageous, and connected to ourselves, each other, and the earth. This is about embodying sacred activism. We love meeting patrons and Presence members and how being part in this way weaves our lives together, as well as making this show possible. If anything from this conversation has moved or inspired you, please get more involved. All information can be found at www.thefutureisbeautiful.co/community. This show really can't go on without your patronage and Presence membership, so please do make it happen. And now, back to the conversation. I almost don't want to ask this question because I feel like it maybe takes us out of that recognition of how just it comes from that inner connection and that listening space. But I'm going to ask it anyway, because I feel like so many of our friends listening are, they want to find like their way of contributing to this beautiful future. Maybe have been burnt out activists in former existences of theirs. Maybe have gone like really far down the spiritual path and kind of lost touch with any of the doing and the action. Maybe were really taken by the grief, the climate grief that was really kind of brought to the surface collectively during that time that Extinction Rebellion and all of those movements were just really strong a couple of years ago. That maybe also through this time of COVID have been going on really deep inner journeys, but maybe lost their way a little with how do you take that knowledge, that deep feminine understanding that's perhaps been cultivated at a deeper level this year, and bring it into relationship with the masculine and take some kind of action. And how does this slowly interplay with the house is on fire and we haven't got time?
I know. It's the most outrageous yogic squat It's I hate yogic squats. Do you hate yogic squats? I hate them. Like sitting on nothing and you think your thighs are about to like just, I don't know, explode. And whoever created this yogic position.
I quite like a squat, but a chair pose is my nemesis.
Oh my God. Yeah, no, it's too much. First of all, I want to say I am the burnt out activist. And I am the spiritual seeker that went all the way and then ended up somehow managing to almost drop it completely. Not all the way. I went very, very, very deep over 20 years with my spiritual practice. I am the person who bottomed out with my health completely with burnout, realized that if I didn't stop doing what I was doing, I was going to die. I am the person who gave my life lock, stock, and barrel and just said, here, have me, use me, I will do whatever it is. I'll leave a public life. I don't care. My life means nothing in comparison to the greatest service of all. I am the person who has cried probably 3 reservoirs over the death of our planet. I'm the person who chose not to have kids because I didn't believe that I could bring children into this world. Like, I'm the person who has felt like a consummate failure all my life because I've never been able to achieve what I feel like I should be achieving. I have a lot of experience of feeling profoundly lost and trying everything and doing it to death. Like, oh my God, no, I'm going to do this and I'm going to do it completely. Oh, there I go, off another cliff.
That's
okay.
Familiar.
Yeah, like I've always thought of myself, my swings from one side of reality to the next side of reality. Like I speed past the midpoint at 100 miles an hour and go, hi, briefly as I pass through balance and go to wildly imbalanced at the other end of the spectrum. And then I'm like, oh my God, now I've done this to death. That was, like I don't need to do this anymore. And then I'm like, to the other side, hi, as I pass by balance in the middle somewhere. And then I've been kind of going, okay, so I've done extremism for myself. I mean, I've not been an extremist. I have lived an extreme life from a very extreme upbringing. So I didn't know balance. I didn't know normal. I didn't know calm. Did not know calm. So then here I am, totally given to the world. I had this experience back in whenever it was, 2001, I think, when I did ritual theater and I played the rape of the earth, and I was the earth getting raped. And that moment of being raped and realizing that we couldn't put our planet back together again put a bomb at my backside. Like I've been running at 100 miles an hour in complete fear of the death of our planet. I love this world more than I even have words to describe. I drove through Colorado about 4 years ago, and almost every tree I saw on this particular stretch of highway for about 5 hours was dead or dying. Entire mountainsides of aspen trees, all dead. Entire mountainsides of fir, all dead, and every other species in between. Everything was dying, and everyone was just driving through it like it was completely normal. I was in pieces. I was in complete and utter pieces. Remember the guy that I was in the car with saying, oh, let's put some comedy on. And I'm like, it's like driving through the scene of a bomb's gone off and there's bodies everywhere. And you're saying, can we just listen to something funny so that we don't have to pay attention? I'm like, I have to pay attention to this. I can't not pay attention to this. And I was devastated. I was howling my eyes out. I got on the plane to come home, and sitting across the aisle from me was Barbara Marx Hubbard, who, if anybody that doesn't know Barbara, we just lost her, but she was the founder of Conscious Evolution, and she was one of the most radiant beings on the planet in terms of thinking cosmically and understanding our place as cosmic beings. She was asleep, and I was like sitting across the aisle just crying and crying and crying and like thinking, you can't wake up an 86-year-old. Come on, Claire, you can't wake her up. Like let her sleep. And then she finally wakes up and she looks at me and she's like, Claire. I was like, Barbara. She was just like, oh my God, you know what this is? This is divine timing. This is a miracle. And I was like, yes, it is. And then she realized I was crying and she's like, what? And I said, I can't do it. I can't do it. I can't do this. I can't manage the death of these trees. I can't manage the poisoning of the Pacific Ocean. I can't manage the loss of our bees. I can't manage it. Like I can't handle this. And she reached out her arm and she grabbed me by the hand and she pulled me across the aisle and she looked straight into my eyes and she said, Claire, You have to find your intimacy with the evolutionary impulse. And as she said it, I had this huge, she just downloaded this deep knowledge that showed me, you're in suffering because you're taking all of this personally. You're in suffering because you're not capable of expanding your perception to include a much bigger timeline of which this phase of human evolution is an unavoidable part. It was such a moment for me, and it's not like I haven't cried my eyes out over the death of God knows what since then. But it was this moment of, oh, okay, how I hold my perspective of all of this radically impacts my capacity to function and to understand my part in it. And it opened me up to this much, 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 much bigger reality, of which I just had to say, okay, so during all my spiritual years, I was much more in touch with that greater reality. And then as soon as I became an environmentalist and got stuck into the science, it was like I lost that and just went straight into the numbers. And then it was like, okay, so somewhere inside each of us, there is a marriage of our soul. There's the soul that we are, that is part of the mainframe, that is part of all that is part of the greater cosmic intelligence of which we're all one, and has accessibility to that consciousness. Just like we have consciousness through our bodies to the material of our bodies, which is Gaia. We're not lost beings, disconnected and, walking around on a strange planet. We're part of Gaia, walking around as part of Gaia, animated by a part of a cosmic intelligence that's running the show. At least that's how I perceive us. So we have infinite capacity to be informed by life, either through the wisdom of our bodies, the earth of our bodies, or through the cosmos that our spirit is part of. So then here we are. We've just been kiboshed by COVID. We're in some sort of a demented reality where we're being forced to be vaccinated. We're being manipulated. We don't know what the truth is anymore. We're being divided. We're being polarized. It's a perfect setup for domination of the masses, make them frightened, divide them against each other.
We're still in a lockdown here, like in England. A lot of people haven't seen anyone for such a long time.
So lonely, exhausted, demoralized, socially pretty screwed up. A lot of people. America is a whole other kettle of fish. I mean, I just can't tell you how mad it is over here, but we've not, I've not been in a lockdown for I don't know how long. But the divisiveness and the polarization over here is completely epic. Okay, so there is the soil that our seeds are being planted in. Like it or lump it, we now are all alive at a time when business as usual on every level is over. It's over. Completely and utterly over. And we may be craving for it to go back to normal, but we have to remember that normal means the death of nature, because that's what we're doing. So therefore, there is no forcing. That's what I mean by slowly. There is no forcing the emergence of the truth that arises in each of us that can redirect our lives. Because if we're just going to react, do a knee-jerk, reach for the first thing that brings us comfort, we're not allowing for the assimilation or the digestion, the integration of the realities that are becoming aware of themselves through our experiencing. And therefore, coherence comes when you grow gradually. It doesn't come when you're yanked faster than you're ready to grow. Like the system to find its coherence, we're having to press our consciousness into the incoherence. We're having to see it for what it is. We're having to literally experience the incoherence and the agony of it. That's the first step of the paradigm shift process. Arrive in the incoherence and recognize it for what it is. This cannot continue. Can you allow for the longings that arise in you that point to something else being possible to surface? Can you allow the truth to arise in you? Yes, our world is apparently going to hell in a handbasket, and so we should be running around screaming our house is on fire, because our house is on fire. And I've been running around screaming for 10 years, and I can tell you what, it will kill you, because I scraped it by a whisper. That's not the way to go. when you have a planet in panic stations, adding more panic to it is not the way to go. What we have to do, in my humble opinion, is slow down. The only way to hear the wisdom of your body is to slow down. The only way to feel for a completely different way of being in the world is to slow down, is to feel for a different level of coherence. It's not just in reaction, it's in an intelligent response to. We're able to fully perceive a change and live from that place. That is a different sovereignty. That's what I'm trying to articulate by this feeling of rising hydration, like rising sanity, that ultimately we're not trying to force the insanity away, we're usurping it by sanity, like the osmosis of that love and intimacy with nature that rises through us, becoming incapable of maintaining the old way of being because we're no longer a vibrational match for it. It's got no sticking point. It's got no anchor place. Do you know what I mean? We've shifted reality. We've shifted what a human being means by allowing for the emergence of our true nature to have its way with us from the bottom up, not from the top down. That, I believe, is the feminine way. And that, I believe, is as valid for men as it is for women. To allow for the voice of our own bodies and for nature itself to rise through us, to listen to it. That's the rise of the feminine. Yes, women need to step up into places of power, but the rise of the feminine happens through all of us, everyone. The honoring of our sacred relationship to life.
Thank you, Clare. I want to ask you as a closing, what your call to action is. And I know this whole conversation has been a call to action and a call to action in perhaps a new way. And with that, if there is something that our friends listening can go and do today, whilst they're inspired by everything you're sharing, what is it that you would like to invite them to do?
I have two things. One's an inner and one's an outer. The inner is grab a piece of paper and write on it, I am a miracle because ... And then go outside, unless it's pouring down with rain. Look outside, just allow yourself to remember what you love about nature. Like sit and just gaze at something beautiful. Allow yourself to be touched. Allow yourself to be touched by some beauty. And then go to that piece of paper and start writing. I'm a miracle because TreeSisters is two sides of a coin. It's a celebration of the in-breath and it's a celebration of the out-breath. Meaning the feminine comes first, the masculine serves the feminine. The feminine being, how do you feel? How do you relate? What are you listening for? What's your intuition saying? What's trying to come through you? What's whispering to you? And in this instance, I would also add on to that as a question for yourselves, what am I trying not to feel that may be blocking the river of my longings? What am I trying not to feel that may be blocking my life force from steering me towards my purpose? What am I avoiding? What am I afraid to feel? I think that the majority of us sit on our gifts because we're afraid to feel things. And then ask yourself the question, what is more important? The suppression of my feelings or the full delivery of my gifts to this world? What is more important? Being safe and small and tidy and contained and appropriate, or rising in response to the greatest challenge our world has ever given? So that's number one. It's just like, can you get a bit more honest with yourself? Can you get a bit more honest? Can you open to beauty And then ask yourself to remind you who you are. That's number one. Number two is, will you do something immediately constructive in the face of climate change, which is, will you plant fast-growing tropical trees? Will you take some of your carbon that you're emitting on a daily basis out of the atmosphere by letting us restore the global forest in the tropics? And when you plant with TreeSisters, we plant those trees through our partners in Amazonia and the Atlantic rainforest of Brazil, in Kenya and Cameroon, and Mozambique and Madagascar and India, Nepal, West Papua and Borneo. And you will be not just sequestering carbon and contributing to the recreation of a hydrated planet, because people forget that trees are the rain creators. Trees create 65% of the clouds on our planet and 45% of the rain. You are also protecting critically endangered species. You're getting men, women, and children out of poverty, out of slavery. When you support TreeSisters, you are growing a forest that is changing lives, but it also gives you the opportunity to know that your fingerprints are on your heart prints. Your love is impacting people who are on the coalface of climate change that is not of their making. So to me, this is two sides of the coin, two sides of deep personal responsibility. Our responsibility to be truthful with ourselves so that we can self-liberate. Are you satisfied with the world as it is? If not, why the hell are you being so complacent about it? And what are you not owning up to yourself about that is holding you back? And do you want a life held back? Are you going to be satisfied with a life held back? Be honest. And then, if I know that climate change is basically screwing up the world for future generations, am I actually doing enough about that? Or am I just waiting for the juggernaut to hit them? Because none of us, frankly, are doing enough. And our world that has normalized all the money that we make is largely at the expense of the planet, and then all the money that we spend is largely at the expense of the planet, then how much of our money are we willing to give back? I want a world where tithing is real, where 10% of everything that we have goes back to the planet, or 20% or 30%. It's like, we have no future without a planet. Restoring the global forest is fundamental to the health of our oceans, to having ice caps at all, to species decline, to temperate weather. If we lose the tropical forest, we've got no temperate weather left. We're done. But nobody's willing to join the dots. What TreeSisters gives you is a really easy shortcut to having a lot of impact. So please, please, again, ask yourself, am I doing enough? Do you believe you're doing enough? Could you look into a child's eyes who's there on a Friday trying desperately to get the world to act like they matter and say, it's all right, I'm doing enough? Or are you willing now to start reallocating funds to the restoration of our world? Because the beautiful future that I see as possible, you cannot take from the planet without giving back. That's the root of TreeSisters. The root of TreeSisters is, can you make it as normal to give back to the planet as it currently is to take nature for granted? That's what I heard in the car crash. For me, that is the shift from an unconscious consumer species to a conscious restorer species, where we have literally made it impossible to take without giving back. And our way of doing that now is by saying simply this: can we all give back? Every single one of us. If you have a business, can your business give back? If you're a consultant, can you give back? If you're a yoga teacher, can you give back? In every transaction that we have, or any system that we're in that has reach, can you seed the invitation of reciprocity? Can you invite everybody to start giving? And we'll grow you a forest. We'll grow you many forests. And we will help you know that you're doing something practical, measurable, and meaningful, whilst you then figure out how to bring your gifts to this world and how to reduce your impact.
And you've made it so easy and so visually delightful. You get to see how many trees you've planted in your forest in a lovely graphic and just actually understand what you're contributing to.
Yeah, so every month, I mean, we're asking for monthly giving. And I'll just say our trees are 40p. And the reason they're so cheap is because we're planting in some of the poorest places on the planet, and because we're also portfolioizing, if there is such a word. So your money gets to be spread across much more expensive projects, but this allows you to plant in places where it would be significantly more expensive, because we're also planting in very, very low cost areas with low cost trees like mangroves, which you don't need a nursery for the mangroves that we're planting in Madagascar. They can just pick up a seed and stick it in the ground. So they're very low cost. But when you grow, when you give every month, because it's not like we're not taking from the planet every month. Every month we're taking, every month we're warming her, every month we're using power. So every month we give back. And there's something just really beautiful about that heartbeat of giving that says, yeah, I'm responsible for my warming. I'm going to give £20 a month. I'm going to give £100 a month, whatever anybody can give, and not what's the least we can give, but what's the most, to say thank you. It's a form of rebuilding relationship. I see what you've given me. You've given me everything. We don't think about it like this. We don't think the planet has given us every single person we love. Every person is made of the planet, not just our homes and our cars and our planes and our clothes and our,
Yeah. And every apple and mango.
everything.
Yeah.
You look at a city, that city came out of the earth. Every city, it's like, oh my God, what have we taken? What did she used to be like before we decided to live like this? Can we at least restore the vital ecosystems that she cannot live without? We cannot live without. So it would be a total privilege for us to grow forests for all of you. But the deeper question really is, who are you? Who are you at this moment in our world right now, as the chaos has its way with you? What is rising in you that needs to be unleashed on behalf of life? That's the real question. There's the juice. There's the gold.
Thank you, Clare. And so for everyone to follow up, it's treesisters.org
/give.
/give.
But, Tree Sisters is more than just planting trees. If you go to the Grow page, there is endless meditations, there are processes, there are courses, there are full moon calls that happen every full moon where I'm guiding women and men into states of consciousness that we are listening for the life coming through our bodies. This is an organization that is on a mission to help the awakening. And so there are many, many different ways to step in, and we'd love to grow your forest as a practical expression of your love made visible.
Thank you. I'm mindful of your time. That was really beautiful.
Well, it's a co-creation.
It feels like just the medicine that's being asked for.
That was a very alive conversation, right? Like that's the stuff that some of that is just literally coming into my awareness in the last few days. So it's like, that's what I mean about a cutting edge conversation. I love those conversations where your listening helps me to try and wrap words around stuff that I'm just moving into awareness of, so that hopefully that can start to trickle further and bring other awarenesses. You just never know what a vibrational transmission can do through who. And so we just show up and offer ourselves, and then see what new seeds are planted or what existing seeds are watered.
Absolutely. I feel like you actually said in part of the intention that everyone's transformed, and I'm already like, whew, I have to go and sit outside and let this yeah, beautiful. Thank you.
It's my pleasure.
Thank you for spending your precious time with us. As always, you can find links to everything we mentioned in this episode, download our book, and discover so much more over on the blog. We don't believe in selling you things you don't need through this podcast, and so it's made possible with you, our community. If you loved this and would like to fund our show with a monthly donation or join our online group to connect with other listeners, please visit www.thefutureisbeautiful.co and click on Community and Support. Please also share with friends, hit subscribe, and leave us a review so we can grow. Those gold stars really help others find us, so these ideas can spread. Here is to us, creating a beautiful future together. The Future is Beautiful is made by an all-female team working voluntarily or on reduced rates until our listeners' support grows. If you have been moved by anything you heard here, please donate the equivalent of buying us a drink. All donations make a huge difference to us and will allow us to keep doing this and remain advertising free. Until next time, I leave you with this question: how will you create beauty in the world?